He was born on a quiet morning in a small town where everyone knew each other. His parents had been waiting for him with hope and excitement, though deep down they sensed life would be different for their little boy. From the very beginning, it was clear that he wasn't like other children. He had Down syndrome, a condition that made some things harder for him, but it never dimmed the spark in his eyes. His tiny hands curled around his parents' fingers, and his soft coos and gurgles filled the room with a sense of wonder. Every parent notices the small things their child does, and for him, even the smallest actions were remarkable. His mother would watch him for hours as he focused intently on toys or made patterns with his fingers, while his father marveled at how he seemed to notice sounds and rhythms in ways that no one expected. Life for him was not easy. Simple tasks that other children learned quickly, like walking steadily or speaking clearly, took longer for him. Sometimes he would stumble or struggle to say words, and other children in the neighborhood would stare, whisper, or even laugh. It hurt him, though he didn't always understand why. He would sometimes look at them with confusion or frustration, wondering what he had done wrong. His parents tried their best to shield him from the world's judgment, but they knew that someday he would have to face it. Even so, they believed in him deeply. They saw past the difficulties and recognized the extraordinary person he was becoming. From a very young age, music became his world. It was not something taught to him at first. It was something he discovered himself. While other children would play with blocks or run in the yard, he would sit quietly, listening to the hum of a fan, the sound of a bird outside the window, or the soft notes of a lullaby. He had a remarkable ability to pick up rhythms, tapping his fingers or humming along. Sometimes his parents would notice him softly singing a tune they had never taught him. It was subtle at first, a few notes here and there, but it grew stronger as he got older. Music seemed to calm him, make him happy, and give him a sense of control in a world that often felt confusing. School was a different story. The classroom, full of noise, rules, and expectations, was often overwhelming. He struggled to keep up with lessons, and his classmates were not always kind. Some would tease him for being different, mocking the way he moved or spoke. The boy would try to ignore it, but the whispers and laughter followed him wherever he went. Despite this, he never stopped smiling. There was a light in him that could not be dimmed by cruelty. His teachers noticed that while he struggled academically, he had other strengths. He was gentle, observant, and incredibly persistent. If he wanted to do something, he would keep trying until he could. His parents and teachers often said that his determination was one of his greatest gifts. At home, the atmosphere was always different. His parents never treated him like someone who could not achieve things. They encouraged him to try new activities, to explore, and to express himself in whatever way felt natural. They knew that their encouragement was crucial because it helped him believe in himself. When he drew pictures, they displayed them proudly on the walls. When he tried to build something with blocks, they praised his effort even if it fell apart. And when he hummed a tune or tapped out a rhythm on the table, they would clap and cheer. These small moments built a foundation of confidence that he carried with him, even when the outside world was harsh. One day, when he was around 5 years old, he wandered into the living room and sat at the piano that had been in the house for years. He had never had lessons, and no one expected him to play. His parents were in the kitchen, busy with chores, and they barely noticed him at first. Then they heard it, a few tentative notes that somehow made sense together. The boy's small fingers moved along the keys with a curiosity that was mesmerizing. It wasn't perfect, but it was music, and it was coming from him. He played slowly at first, pausing to think about each note, but there was a rhythm and flow that seemed almost natural. His mother peeked into the room and gasped quietly, while his father stopped what he was doing, eyes wide with surprise. They had seen him respond to music before, but this was different. This was creation. The piano became his sanctuary. Every day he would spend time sitting in front of it, exploring sounds, tapping keys, and listening intently. Sometimes he would play melodies he had heard on the radio, and other times he would invent his own tunes. He didn't need to read music yet. He played by ear, guided by instinct and feeling. It was as if the piano understood him in a way that people sometimes did not. And slowly, music gave him a voice, a way to express joy, sadness, excitement, and even frustration without needing words. His parents noticed changes in him as he spent more time with the piano. He became calmer, more focused, and happier. The teasing at school still hurt, but the piano was a place where he felt confident and strong. They made sure to support him in every way possible, arranging for small lessons when he was ready, and finding a teacher who could be patient, kind, and encouraging. The teacher, who had experience with children of different abilities, immediately recognized the boy's potential. She saw the light in his eyes, the way his fingers moved over the keys, and she knew that with guidance, he could develop something truly special. Despite his growing skill, the boy's journey was not without challenges. Learning new pieces was difficult. He would often become frustrated when he couldn't get a note right, or when a melody didn't sound the way he imagined it. Some days he wanted to give up, but he didn't. His parents reminded him that effort was more important than perfection, and that mistakes were just part of learning. Over time, he learned to persevere, understanding that each attempt brought him closer to mastery. These lessons extended beyond the piano. They taught him patience, resilience, and the importance of believing in oneself. Even though the piano brought him joy, the outside world still held moments of sadness. Children at school continued to stare or whisper, and adults sometimes treated him differently because of his condition. He noticed it and felt it deeply. There were days when he would come home in tears, hurt by words or actions that he didn't understand. On those days, the piano became even more important. Sitting at the keys, he could release all the emotions that had built up inside him, transforming pain into music. This ability to channel emotion into something beautiful was rare, even in adults, and it set him apart in a quiet, powerful way. His parents were careful to nurture his emotional world as much as his musical world. They celebrated every small achievement, whether it was learning a new tune or simply sitting at the piano for a longer time than before. They took him to concerts and recitals, not necessarily for him to perform, but so he could experience the joy of music performed by others. Watching the expression of musicians, feeling the energy in a room full of music inspired him. He absorbed it all, letting it influence the way he approached his own playing. Slowly, the boy was building a connection not only with the piano, but with the wider world of music, a world that was waiting for him even if the people around him weren't ready to see his talent yet. At home, the atmosphere was filled with warmth and encouragement. His parents understood that the world might not always be kind, but their love was a constant. They taught him that being different was not a flaw. It was something to be proud of. They reminded him that every person has challenges and every person has strengths. For him, the piano became the place where his strengths could shine brightest. He practiced regularly, learning to recognize patterns in music, experimenting with rhythm, and listening to how different notes could create different moods. Each day brought new discoveries, new joys, and sometimes new frustrations, but he faced each one with determination and courage. Even his siblings, who sometimes didn't understand why he spent so much time at the piano, began to appreciate his talent. They would sit nearby watching him play, and occasionally they would clap or smile at a melody that moved them. The boy was learning not only music, but also the subtle ways in which people could connect through shared experience. Music became a bridge between him and the world, a way to communicate that words could not always express. The boy's journey in those early years was a mix of struggle, discovery, and triumph. He faced challenges every day, both from the world and within himself, but he also experienced moments of pure joy and wonder. Music gave him purpose, confidence, and a sense of identity. Even in a world that sometimes seemed unkind, he had found a place where he belonged. The piano was more than an instrument. It was a friend, a teacher, and a guide. And as he grew, the bond he formed with music would shape not only his abilities but also the way people saw him, challenging assumptions and changing hearts in ways no one could have imagined. As the boy grew older, his love for music became even stronger. The piano was no longer just a toy or a way to pass the time. It had become a part of who he was. Every day after school, he would rush home, eager to sit at the keys and explore the world of melodies that seemed to exist only for him. He would place his small hands on the worn keys, feeling the smooth surface beneath his fingers, and slowly, carefully, begin to play. Sometimes he played tunes he had heard on the radio, mimicking them as best as he could. Other times he made up his own songs, simple at first but growing in complexity as he experimented with different combinations of notes. Music had become his voice, a way to express emotions that words could not capture. His parents noticed the change in him. He seemed more confident, happier, and calmer when he spent time at the piano. Even on difficult days when school had been hard or other children had been unkind, He could come home, sit at the piano, and find peace. His parents saw the joy in his face, the concentration in his eyes, and they felt proud. They encouraged him gently, reminding him that every day was an opportunity to learn something new. "You don't have to be perfect," his mother would say. "Just play from your heart." These simple words meant a lot to him, giving him permission to explore and make mistakes without fear. It was around this time that his music teacher began to notice something special. The boy had started attending regular lessons, small sessions where he could learn new techniques and improve his skills. At first, it was challenging. Reading sheet music was difficult, and coordinating both hands to play at the same time required patience and practice. Sometimes he would become frustrated, pounding the keys harder than necessary or sighing deeply in disappointment. But the teacher quickly realized that beneath the surface there was something extraordinary. The boy had an ear for music that was rare even among older students. He could hear subtle differences in tone, recognize melodies after just a few listens, and remember them with surprising accuracy. The lessons became a journey of discovery, not just for him but for the teacher as well. Every time he sat at the piano, he surprised those around him. A simple exercise in scales or rhythm, which most students would find boring, became an opportunity for him to experiment, to find new sounds, and to create something unexpected. The teacher would watch quietly, amazed at the patience and curiosity he displayed. Even when he made mistakes, there was something in the way he tried again and again that was inspiring. The teacher began to realize that this boy was not just learning music, he was living it. Every note, every pause, every rhythm carried emotion, intention, and expression. Despite his growing talent, life outside the piano remained challenging. School was still a place where he faced ridicule. Some children laughed at the way he spoke, the way he moved, or the way he struggled to keep up with lessons. Others whispered behind his back or stared when he walked by. These moments hurt, but the boy had begun to find strength in his music. Whenever someone laughed at him, he would remember the piano waiting for him at home, a place where he could shine and be himself. His parents reminded him often that being different was not a weakness but a part of what made him unique. "You have something special inside you," his father would say. "Let it grow, and don't let anyone take it away." It wasn't long before the boy started to dream bigger. He didn't just want to play at home or in small lessons anymore. He wanted to share his music with others. The idea of performing in front of people was both exciting and terrifying. He imagined sitting in a room full of strangers, fingers poised above the keys and the music flowing through him. But he also worried. What if people laughed? What if they didn't understand him? What if he made mistakes? These thoughts sometimes kept him awake at night. Yet deep down, there was a courage inside him that refused to give up. He wanted to show the world what he could do, even if it was just one person at a time. His parents supported his dream, helping him prepare in small ways. They would ask him to play for family members during dinner, for neighbors who dropped by, and even for the family dog. Each performance, no matter how small, helped him build confidence. The family cheered for him, clapped for him, and celebrated each note he played perfectly. They also taught him to handle mistakes with grace. "If a note doesn't sound right, it's okay," his mother said one evening. "Just keep going. The music is bigger than any mistake." These words became a mantra for him, reminding him that music was about expression, not perfection. The boy's dedication began to pay off. His fingers grew stronger, more flexible, and more precise. He could play longer pieces without stopping, remembering every note and rhythm. But it wasn't just technical skill that improved. It was his emotional connection to music. He began to understand how certain melodies could convey sadness, happiness, excitement, or calm. When he played, people could feel what he felt. Music had become a bridge between him and the world, a language that transcended words. One day, during a lesson, the teacher decided to let him try a more challenging piece. It was a beautiful composition, filled with emotion and complexity. The boy looked at the sheet music, his brow furrowed, unsure if he could do it. But then he placed his hands on the keys and began to play. The first few notes were hesitant, a little off rhythm, but as he continued, something magical happened. He began to feel the music, letting it guide his fingers. Each note flowed naturally, carrying emotion and depth. The teacher watched in awe, realizing that the boy was not just playing notes. He was telling a story. It was a moment that marked a turning point. From that day on, the boy's talent was undeniable. As word of his skill spread, more people began to take notice. Neighbors would stop by to listen. Teachers would ask him to play for small school events, and even other children began to watch with curiosity instead of ridicule. Of course, not everyone understood him yet. Some were still skeptical, whispering that he would never be able to perform in front of a real audience. But the boy paid them no mind. He had learned that music was not about proving people wrong. It was about expressing himself and sharing joy. The more he practiced, the more confident he became. The boy also discovered the joy of experimenting. Sometimes he would change a note in a song just to see how it sounded. Sometimes he would combine two melodies, creating something entirely new. His imagination was limitless, and the piano was his playground. He would sit for hours trying different rhythms, listening to how notes echoed in the room and watching how small changes could make a big difference. These experiments were not just fun. They were teaching him creativity, patience, and the power of exploration. Every new discovery, every small success made him more determined to continue. At the same time, the boy's personality was growing. Music had given him confidence, but it also taught him humility. He knew that no matter how talented he was, there was always more to learn. He began to appreciate the work of other musicians, listening to recordings and trying to understand how they created emotion through sound. He would sometimes mimic their style, not to copy but to learn. Each attempt made him better, more expressive and more connected to the music he loved. Even outside the piano, the boy began to change. He became more patient with himself and others. He learned to handle frustration without giving up. He developed empathy, understanding how it felt to struggle and how important encouragement could be. Friends and family noticed the difference. He smiled more, laughed more, and even shared his joy with others. Music had not only nurtured his talent, but had also shaped his character, teaching him resilience, kindness, and the power of perseverance. As the boy continued to grow, the piano became more than just an instrument. It became a symbol of hope and possibility. It reminded him that no matter what challenges he faced, there was something he could do that was uniquely his own. It reminded him that the world could be a better place when people focused on strengths instead of weaknesses. And it reminded him that even when others laughed or doubted him, there was a place where he belonged, where his efforts mattered, and where his heart could speak freely through the music he created. By the time he was ready to consider performing for a larger audience, he had spent countless hours practicing, experimenting, and learning. He knew that performing would not be easy. He knew that some people would still laugh or doubt him. But he also knew that he had something special inside him, something that could touch hearts, inspire others, and change perceptions. With every note he played, he was preparing not just for a performance, but for a moment when the world would see him as he truly was: talented, passionate, and full of heart. And so the boy continued his journey, fingers dancing over the keys, heart full of hope, and mind focused on the music. Each day brought new lessons, new challenges, and new joys. Each day strengthened his connection to the piano, to himself, and to the world around him. Music had become his companion, his teacher, and his voice. And as he grew, the boy was preparing for the moment when he would step beyond the comfort of his home and let the world hear the music that had always lived in his heart. The boy had been practicing for months, perfecting every piece he could manage and learning new techniques from his teacher. The piano had become his world, and he had grown confident in his ability to express emotion through music. Yet, as the day of his first public performance approached, he felt a mixture of excitement and fear. The idea of sitting in front of strangers, of people he didn't know, watching every movement of his hands and listening to every note, made his stomach twist. He had never experienced anything like this before. At home, everything felt safe and familiar. The piano, the living room, his parents' supportive faces, all of it was comforting. But stepping out into the wider world, he knew, would be different. The community knew he was going to perform, and not everyone reacted with encouragement. Some neighbors whispered, doubting his ability. Some children from his school laughed when they heard the news. "He'll probably mess up," they said. "Why is he even trying?" The boy heard some of this, though he tried not to let it bother him. Inside, he felt a flicker of doubt. What if they were right? What if he wasn't ready? The fear of being laughed at, of failing in front of so many eyes, was hard to shake. He would sometimes sit quietly, hands hovering above the keys, imagining people pointing and giggling. Even though he had spent hours mastering the piano, This thought was one he had to confront every day. His parents noticed his hesitation. They tried to reassure him, speaking softly, their words full of love. "You have worked so hard," his mother said one afternoon, holding his small hands. "It doesn't matter what others think. What matters is that you share what's in your heart." His father nodded. "Music is your gift. Let it speak for you. The people who matter will listen." Their encouragement was steady and calm, helping to ground him. They reminded him that even if some people laughed, it would not erase the effort, talent, and love he had put into his music. The boy's teacher also played an important role in helping him prepare. She understood that performance anxiety was natural for anyone, but it could be even more intense for someone who had faced ridicule his entire life. They spent long hours rehearsing, not just the music itself, but how to handle mistakes, how to breathe calmly, and how to focus when surrounded by an audience. She taught him that mistakes were normal, that every musician makes them, and that the key was to keep playing, to stay connected to the music rather than the fear. The boy listened carefully, absorbing every word, trying to internalize the calm confidence his teacher showed. Despite the support at home and in lessons, the boy still had moments of insecurity. There were days when he wanted to give up, when the thought of public performance felt too heavy. Sometimes he would sit at the piano and stare at the keys, unable to play, overwhelmed by worry. Other times he would play a piece perfectly in private, then imagine stepping onto the stage and suddenly everything falling apart. These thoughts could be frightening, but gradually he learned to face them. He would take deep breaths, remind himself of the hours of practice, and tell himself that he had a gift that deserved to be shared. Slowly, courage began to grow within him, fueled by his love for music and the belief that he could rise above fear. As the day of the recital drew near, the boy faced another challenge: how to handle the whispers and laughter from people who did not understand him. At school, some children openly joked, calling him names or pretending to mimic his movements. The boy felt a sting in his heart, but he remembered what his parents had taught him. He had learned to focus on the piano, to let the music drown out the noise. Music had always been his sanctuary, and now it became his armor. Each time he practiced, he imagined sitting in front of the audience, ignoring the whispers and letting the piano speak for him. This visualization gave him strength and helped him prepare mentally for what was coming. His family also took steps to make the day special. They encouraged him to pick out his own outfit, to feel proud of how he presented himself. They practiced small performances at home, inviting neighbors and friends to watch so he could become comfortable with an audience, even if it was just a few people. They clapped for him, cheered for him, and reminded him that the love and joy of music were what truly mattered. Every small practice performance built his confidence, preparing him to face the larger crowd waiting at the recital hall. Finally, the day arrived. The recital hall was filled with parents, teachers, students, and townspeople. The air was buzzing with anticipation, though some of it carried doubt and skepticism. The boy stood backstage, hands trembling slightly, eyes wide as he looked at the audience. The whispers and laughter from school echoed faintly in his mind, threatening to shake his confidence. His mother knelt beside him, holding his hands and speaking softly. "Remember, you are here because you love music. Let it guide you. The people who matter will listen." His father nodded, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You've worked so hard. Trust yourself." When it was his turn to perform, the boy walked slowly to the piano. The room grew quiet, and a few giggles from the back of the hall reminded him of the skepticism surrounding him. His heart pounded, but he took a deep breath and placed his fingers on the keys. At first, the notes were cautious, hesitant, as if testing the waters. But soon he felt the familiar rhythm in his fingertips. The anxiety began to fade, replaced by a sense of calm focus. He remembered all the hours of practice, the lessons, the encouragement, and the love that had brought him to this moment. As he played, the room began to change. The skeptical whispers faded, replaced by an attentive silence. People leaned forward in their seats, listening carefully to each note. The boy's fingers moved with precision and emotion, each chord telling a story. He had learned to feel the music in his heart and let it guide his hands. The melodies flowed naturally, capturing the attention of everyone present. It was no longer a simple performance. It was a conversation between the boy and the audience, spoken entirely through music. Even those who had doubted him could not look away. Some smiled in surprise, others leaned closer, and a few wiped tears from their eyes. The boy was no longer just a child with Down syndrome trying to play the piano. He was a musician, expressing emotion, capturing hearts, and commanding attention through talent and passion. Every note was a statement. He was capable, he was talented, and he deserved to be seen and heard. The mockery and doubt that had followed him for so long seemed to melt away, replaced by awe and admiration. By the time he finished, the room erupted in applause. Standing ovations filled the hall, and the boy felt a mixture of relief, joy, and pride. He had faced his fears, ignored the doubters, and shared his music with the world. In that moment, nothing else mattered. The whispers, the laughter, and the skepticism had no power over him. All that mattered was the music, and the way it connected him to those who were willing to listen. His parents rushed to his side, hugging him tightly, tears in their eyes. They had always believed in him, but seeing him succeed on this stage was beyond anything they had imagined. The boy's teacher also embraced him, proud of how he had performed. "You did it," she said softly. "You let the music speak and everyone heard it." The boy smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment that was both deep and lasting. He had not only overcome fear, but he had also proven to himself that dedication, practice, and love for something you believe in can overcome doubt and mockery. In the days that followed, the performance became the talk of the town. People who had once doubted him spoke differently, recognizing his talent and determination. Some students from school approached him, apologizing for the teasing or asking how he learned to play so well. The boy's confidence grew, not from the praise alone, but from the realization that he had faced his fears and succeeded. Music had always been his refuge, and now it had also become his bridge to the world, connecting him to people in ways that words never could. The boy continued to practice, but he was no longer just preparing for lessons or small recitals. He was preparing for a life filled with music, a life where he could inspire others, overcome challenges, and show the world that talent and determination are not limited by anyone's expectations. The mockery he had faced in the past had shaped him, teaching him resilience, patience, and the importance of believing in oneself. And as he looked toward the future, he understood that this was only the beginning of a journey filled with possibility, courage, and music that came straight from his heart. The day of the big recital finally arrived, and the boy felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness unlike anything he had experienced before. Months of practice had led to this moment, and though he had faced doubts and mockery in the past, he was determined to let his music speak for itself. The recital hall was filled with people, parents, teachers, classmates, and townspeople, all waiting for the performance to begin. The air buzzed with anticipation. Some had come with curiosity, some with doubt, and some with hope. The boy standing backstage looked at the crowd with wide eyes. He could hear whispers, faint laughter, and the occasional joke aimed in his direction. His heart pounded, and for a moment he wondered if he could do it. His parents were close by, offering quiet encouragement. "Remember," his mother whispered, "this is your moment. Just play from your heart." His father nodded, squeezing his shoulder gently. "You've practiced so much. Let the music guide you." Their words comforted him, grounding him in the belief that he was ready. The teacher standing nearby gave him a reassuring smile. "You know the music. Trust yourself," she said. These familiar voices helped calm the whirlwind of fear and doubt inside him. He took a deep breath, letting it fill his lungs and settle his mind. Then slowly, he walked toward the piano on the stage. The room seemed suddenly larger than life. Eyes turned toward him, some curious, some skeptical. A few children from school snickered, whispering among themselves. He felt the old sting of mockery, but instead of letting it stop him, he focused on the piano. This was his space, his world. He seated himself, fingers hovering above the keys, and closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered every lesson, every hour of practice, every note he had mastered. Most importantly, he remembered why he loved music, the way it made him feel alive, understood, and free. That thought gave him strength. He opened his eyes and began to play. The first few notes were careful, testing the waters, but soon his fingers moved with confidence. The melody flowed naturally, and the boy became absorbed in the music. Every chord carried emotion, every note a piece of his heart. The audience began to notice. Whispers faded as people leaned forward, captivated by the sound. The room seemed to shift, the energy changing from doubt to attention, from mockery to curiosity. The boy's hands danced across the keys, precise yet expressive, and the audience could feel the story he was telling. He played with a focus and passion that was impossible to ignore. Even the children who had laughed at him before fell silent, watching in awe. His music conveyed emotions that words could not: joy, hope, courage, and a quiet strength that radiated from him. It was clear that this was not just a performance, it was a declaration. The boy was not defined by his condition, by the laughter of others, or by anyone's expectations. He was defined by his talent, his dedication, and the love he put into every note. As the performance continued, the boy grew more confident. His initial nervousness melted away, replaced by a flow that seemed almost magical. He played melodies that soared and dipped, notes that lingered and resonated, capturing the attention of every person in the hall. Parents whispered to each other in astonishment. Teachers exchanged glances of admiration, and even the skeptics could not help but be moved. The boy's music told a story of perseverance, of overcoming challenges, and of the beauty that comes from expressing one's true self. The boy's parents watched from the front row, tears welling in their eyes. They had always believed in him, but seeing him on this stage, commanding attention and admiration, filled them with pride beyond words. They remembered the early days when he struggled with simple tasks, when he faced ridicule, when he doubted himself. And now here he was, transforming fear into art, doubt into beauty. Every note was a testament to his resilience and his unbreakable spirit. The audience began to react more openly. Some clapped softly during pauses, not wanting to interrupt the music but unable to contain their admiration. Others whispered quietly, amazed at the skill and emotion pouring from the boy's hands. Even the children who had once mocked him were quiet, some leaning forward with wide eyes, silently acknowledging his talent. The hall, once filled with doubt and skepticism, was now filled with respect and wonder. The boy continued, losing himself in the music. He experimented slightly, adding gentle variations to the melodies, testing the limits of his own creativity. His teacher watched with pride, knowing that this moment was more than just a recital. It was a turning point, a breakthrough, a moment when the boy showed the world that ability is not limited by expectations or prejudice. The music spoke louder than words, stronger than mockery, and more beautifully than anyone had imagined. As the final notes lingered in the air, the boy held his hands above the keys, letting the sound settle. The hall was silent for a brief, breathtaking moment, as if everyone was processing what they had just heard. Then slowly the applause began. It started softly, then grew louder, until the entire room was clapping, cheering, and rising to their feet. The boy's face lit up with a mixture of relief, joy, and pride. He had done it. He had faced fear, ignored mockery, and shared the deepest part of himself with the world. The applause continued as the boy's parents rushed to the stage, enveloping him in hugs and kisses. Their pride was overwhelming, and their eyes shone with tears. The teacher embraced him as well, whispering words of congratulations. "You showed everyone what music can do," she said. "You showed them who you are." The boy smiled, feeling a warmth and satisfaction unlike anything he had ever known. In that moment, the laughter and doubts of the past seemed distant and meaningless. He had proven something far more important, to himself and to everyone watching. After the recital, the boy received words of admiration from many in the audience. Teachers, parents, neighbors, and even strangers approached him, praising his skill, dedication, and courage. Some children who had laughed or mocked him before apologized quietly, while others asked questions about how he learned to play so beautifully. The boy answered politely, his heart full, but he didn't need validation from anyone. The true reward was the music itself, and the way it had touched hearts and changed perceptions. The performance had a lasting impact. People in the community began to see him differently. No longer just a boy with Down syndrome, he was recognized as a talented musician with dedication, creativity, and a heart full of passion. His story spread slowly, inspiring others to look beyond differences and see the abilities, strengths, and uniqueness in every person. The boy himself felt a new sense of confidence. He knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he had already proven to himself that he could face fear, overcome doubt, and succeed in ways that mattered. In the weeks that followed, the boy continued to practice, but he also began to dream bigger. He imagined performing at larger venues, sharing his music with more people, and inspiring other children who might feel different or overlooked. He understood that the piano was not just a hobby or a pastime, it was a gift, a tool for expression, and a bridge between himself and the world. Every time he sat at the keys, he remembered the moment on that stage, the applause, the awe, and the joy, and it motivated him to keep growing, learning, and creating. The boy's journey had not been easy. He had faced ridicule, doubts, and fears that could have held him back. But he had persevered. Through music, he had discovered confidence, strength, and the power to connect with others. His performance was more than a recital. It was proof that talent and passion can shine through obstacles, that courage can overcome fear, and that the heart's expression can touch people in ways nothing else can. For the boy, the recital was just the beginning. It marked a turning point in his life, a moment when he realized that the world was capable of appreciating his gift. The mockery and skepticism of the past had taught him resilience, but the applause and admiration showed him that belief in oneself could transform perceptions. Music had become his voice, his shield, and his bridge to the world. And as he continued to play, he knew that there were countless melodies yet to explore, countless emotions to express, and countless hearts to touch. From that day forward, the boy played with confidence and joy, knowing that the world could be a better place when people looked beyond differences and recognized talent, effort, and heart. Every performance reminded him of the courage it took to face fear, the power of persistence, and the beauty of sharing one's true self. The piano, once a simple instrument in his home, had become a symbol of hope, determination, and the magic that happens when someone dares to believe in themselves and their gift. After the recital, the boy felt a sense of pride and joy unlike anything he had ever known. The applause, the smiles, and the admiration from everyone in the hall stayed with him long after he left the stage. For the first time, he realized that the effort, practice, and love he had poured into music had a power beyond himself. It could touch the hearts of others, inspire them, and change the way they saw him. It was a feeling both new and exhilarating, and it filled him with hope for what was still to come. His parents could barely contain their pride. They had always believed in him, but watching him on that stage, hearing the music flow from his heart, they understood that their son had accomplished something extraordinary. They hugged him tightly, telling him how proud they were. "You showed everyone who you really are," his mother whispered. "You shared your heart, and they listened." His father added, "This is only the beginning. Keep playing, keep learning, and keep shining." Their words reinforced a confidence that had been growing inside him, one that would help carry him through future challenges. The performance quickly became a turning point in the community. People who had once doubted the boy or whispered behind his back now spoke of him with admiration. Teachers praised his dedication. Neighbors complimented his talent, and even the children who had mocked him at school began to see him in a new light. Some approached him, offering apologies or simply expressing amazement. The boy, humble and kind, accepted these gestures graciously, understanding that the performance had not only been about proving his ability, but also about sharing a part of himself that deserved recognition and respect. Word of his talent spread beyond the small recital hall. Local events invited him to perform, and people who had not previously known him wanted to hear the boy whose music had captured the hearts of the town. Each performance brought new experiences, new challenges, and new opportunities to grow. Yet no matter how many people applauded or praised him, he remained grounded. The boy knew that music was not about fame or recognition. It was about expression, connection, and the joy of creating something meaningful. Every note, every melody, every performance was a reflection of who he was and what he had learned through perseverance, patience, and love. Despite his growing recognition, the boy never forgot the struggles that had shaped him. He remembered the times he had been laughed at, teased, or doubted. Those experiences, though painful, had taught him resilience, empathy, and the importance of believing in oneself. They had made his triumphs all the more meaningful. He understood that many children, like him, faced challenges that others did not fully comprehend. This awareness inspired him to be kind, patient, and encouraging to others, using his own journey as a source of hope and motivation. His family continued to support him in every way possible. They celebrated each new opportunity, attended every performance, and reminded him that his talent was a gift to be cherished. They encouraged him to explore new pieces, experiment with melodies, and push the boundaries of his creativity. The boy thrived in this environment, feeling both nurtured and challenged. He spent hours at the piano practicing not for approval, but for the love of music itself. Each session was a chance to discover something new, to express emotions, and to deepen the connection he had with the instrument that had become a part of his life. Over time, the boy became an inspiration to others. Children who had once been teased or underestimated saw in him a model of courage and determination. They realized that differences did not define a person's potential, and that persistence, passion, and belief in oneself could lead to remarkable achievements. Parents, teachers, and community members also found hope in his story, understanding that support, encouragement, and recognition could help unlock hidden talents in children. The boy's journey had become more than a personal triumph. It had become a lesson for everyone who witnessed it. The boy's confidence continued to grow with each performance. He learned to handle larger audiences, more challenging pieces, and new experiences with grace and determination. Each time he played, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that his music had the power to move people, inspire them, and create moments of beauty in their lives. Yet he remained humble, remembering that the journey was ongoing. There was always more to learn, more melodies to explore, and more emotions to express through his music. Even in everyday life, the boy's experience with music shaped his character. He became more patient with others, more understanding of struggles, and more willing to help those who face challenges. He recognized that talent and perseverance were important, but so were kindness, empathy, and the willingness to encourage others. The piano had taught him not only technical skill and creativity, but also life lessons that extended far beyond music. It had shown him the value of dedication, the importance of believing in oneself, and the impact of sharing one's gifts with the world. As he continued to perform, the boy's story began to inspire others in ways that extended beyond the music. Teachers used his journey as an example in classrooms, explaining how determination and love for one's passion could overcome obstacles. Parents shared his story with their children, encouraging them to pursue their interests and never let fear or doubt hold them back. And children who faced teasing, ridicule, or self-doubt found hope in the boy's experience, realizing that they too could overcome challenges and achieve something remarkable. The boy also began to think about the future. He dreamed of performing in larger halls, sharing his music with more people, and continuing to develop his skills. He imagined teaching others one day, passing on the lessons he had learned about perseverance, creativity, and the importance of following one's passion. While he understood that there would always be challenges ahead, he felt confident in his ability to face them. The support of his family, the encouragement of his teacher, and the lessons he had learned from both failure and success gave him a sense of purpose and determination that could not be shaken. One of the most meaningful aspects of his journey was the realization that music was a bridge. It connected him to people in ways that words sometimes could not. Through the piano, he could communicate emotion, tell a story, and inspire others. Each performance became an opportunity to share a part of himself with the world, and each time he played, he left an impression that lingered in the hearts of those who listened. The boy understood that his music had value, not only because of skill, but because of the heart and effort behind it. As he reflected on his journey, the boy realized how far he had come. From a child who had struggled with simple tasks and faced ridicule at school, he had grown into a young musician who could captivate an audience, express deep emotion, and inspire others. Every challenge he had faced, every moment of doubt or fear had contributed to his growth. The boy had learned resilience, patience, and the importance of self-belief. More than that, he had learned that talent and dedication could overcome prejudice and misunderstanding, leaving a lasting impact on those around him. The boy's story was no longer just about his personal journey. It had become a source of inspiration and hope for the community. His performances reminded people that every child has potential, that differences do not define ability, and that encouragement and support can unlock hidden strengths. Teachers, parents, and peers all began to see children with unique challenges in a new light, recognizing that with patience, guidance, and opportunity, remarkable things could happen. The boy's music had transformed perceptions, turning skepticism into admiration and doubt into respect. Through it all, the boy remained humble. He did not perform for fame or recognition. He performed because he loved music, because it brought him joy and because it allowed him to express himself in a way that was uniquely his own. Each note, each melody, each performance was a celebration of the journey he had taken, the obstacles he had overcome, and the support he had received. Music had become a part of him, shaping not only his talent but also his character, values, and outlook on life. The boy continued to grow, both as a musician and as a person. He explored new pieces, experimented with different styles, and continued to practice with dedication and passion. Each performance became an opportunity to connect, to inspire, and to share the gift that had been nurtured in him from a young age. He understood that the journey of learning and growing was ongoing, and he embraced it with determination, curiosity, and joy. In the end, the boy's journey was a testament to the power of perseverance, passion, and belief in oneself. From the struggles of early childhood to the triumph of public performance, he had shown that talent, dedication, and heart could overcome doubt, ridicule, and fear. His music had touched lives, changed perceptions, and inspired others to see beyond differences and recognize the potential in every individual. The boy had not only found his voice through music, but he had also found a way to make the world a more understanding, compassionate, and hopeful place. And as he continued to play, he knew that this was just the beginning. The piano was more than an instrument. It was a companion, a guide, and a bridge to the world. Each note carried with it the lessons he had learned, the emotions he had felt, and the dreams he still held. The boy had faced challenges that could have held him back, but he had turned them into strength. He had shared his heart with the world, and in doing so he had shown that courage, dedication, and love for what you do can change lives in ways that are truly remarkable.